to choose comfort over commitment, or to settle for our own limited understanding of your kingdom. Spirit, that we may be united in purpose, patient with one another, and courageous in our decisions. Guide our leaders and open our hearts to the direction you are calling us to take. May every decision we make bring you glory, strengthen our faith, and lead us deeper into your truth. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So let's keep the Holy Spirit in the middle of us. Step 2, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Bobby Fitzhugh. I'm the canon for transitions, which is why I'm here, and social justice, which are two not necessarily related things, but they're two of the things that we mushed together to create my last of 4 job descriptions that I've had since I went to work for the diocese back in 2018. So, I work with churches who are in transition, not just those who are seeking rectors, but those who are seeking where to go next. What does our future look like? And I think we talked about a lot of different options before, and I would just like to kind of revisit those. First of all, at that time, I think I talked a little about what the diocese was doing. Is it helpful to give you a little bit of background again about where we've gone from, where we are now as a diocese, or at least what we're doing at this moment? So when, in January of 2026, the budget for the diocesan that the Diocesan Council adopted did not include really any funding for clergy serving churches in the churches of Wyoming, except the reservation. Roxanne Friday is the Indigenous minister on the reservation, serves both of those churches, and her compensation is 100% funded by the diocese. No other church during this year has had any level of financial support. So again, Trinity had Jordan, part of his salary was being compensated. I was based in Carbon County for almost 4.5 years. Time flies when you're having fun, you know? Serving Rollins and Encampment and taking care of the church in Medicine Bow and helping Saratoga and Dixon. Randy Belton was based over in Cokeville, Big Piney, and Bondurant, serving those 3 churches and sort of helping some others. Tom and Jenny Kettner were in Region 3, so they were doing Glen Rock, Glendo, Douglas, and Wheatland. And then Linda Anderson was up in the Bighorn Basin serving Meeteetse and Basin. So those were the staff clergy that the diocese paid 100% of our wages to serve these churches who couldn't afford a priest. In the budget process a year ago, the diocese made a decision that that was not the best use of their resources. And so they removed all of those positions from the budget, which means that those churches, those missional priests we were called, served 13 churches. So that's 13 churches that as of January 1 had no clergy. In some cases, very few cases, probably no cases, 1 case. Wheatland had Lori Modisett. Otherwise, they didn't even have retired clergy in their congregations. So those were churches who immediately went, in many cases, back to a place where they didn't have any kind of regular clergy support. Since that time, Linda Anderson has retired as a staff person and is still serving those churches as a non-stipendiary clergy. So she's not paid to serve them, but she still is happy to serve Meeteetse and Basin as a retired priest. Jenny Kettner is still serving Wheatland twice a month as what's called a long-term supply. They've contracted with her to still be their priest, but she's only coming twice a month now because they're paying they're paying her to do that. Glendo, I think, is paying Tom Kettner to do one Sunday a month because that's all they can afford to do. Glen Rock is discerning. Jeannie Osborne is called from that congregation, and she should be ordained hopefully sometime in the next year. She graduated from Iona last weekend. So, but they don't. Glen Rock doesn't want to have a full-time a priest of their own. They like having a different priest come in, a different preacher primarily. They like that model, and they've done that for years. When Tom Kettner and I were ordained in 2013, one of the people at our ordinations was their senior warden, who marched up to us before we even left the church and said, "When can I put you down? Which week of the month would each of you like to serve?" So that, some churches are pretty aggressive, and they still want to have Eucharist every month or every week, but they're trying to make that happen. Rollins is currently doing without a priest at all. I still go down there once every month or once every 6 weeks. Randy Belton is now part of a 3-person discernment team with me and with Laura Gilbert, staff clergy, who are now charged with serving all 45 churches support-wise as staff. So that means anything from Randy maybe coming in, not so much on a weekend because he's trying not to work Sundays. I'm the Sunday person. But Randy would come in and he's kind of a scout, figure out what are your needs, what resources do you need that the diocese can help you with. Laura is focused more on the discernment process, so she meets more with individuals who are in discernment, who are in the process. You probably meet with her, Shalini, once in a while. And then I am working with, again, primary churches in transition, but that's a number now. We filled the Pinedale spot since I was last here. Du Bois, Bonnie Deo is now, Deo, I always say it the backwards way, okay. Bonnie Deo is now a priest in charge a 3/4 time priest in charge in Du Bois. Bonnie is over 73, so she's year to year now. Thermopolis just called Pamela Glasser, who is also over 72. But she's a 3/4 time priest there, year to year kind of basis. Jim Stewart just announced that he's going to be retiring from Warland the 1st of September, 8th of September. Cody has been open for a year and a half now, since Mary Cockett left. And so I was just up there last weekend. We're still seeking a full-time rector for Cody. Torrington is open. Kenley Barling retired Easter, Palm Sunday actually. Yeah, let's see how that went with that congregation. And so I'll be over there again next weekend. They are looking at potentially partnering with Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, that just lost their rector, to see if maybe we can do a multi-point call, a 2-church call. So we've been in conversation with the Bishop of Nebraska and their candidate of the ordinary to see if we can, at least on an interim basis, we're looking to see if Mary Cockett, Mary is willing, we just have to have her meet with Scotts Bluff and make sure it all works. But she would basically go over there, kind of like she did Pinedale, bookend weekends and do some stuff. And then that gives them time to call things. Go. That's okay.
Where did the money that used to fund I think you said 6 people, 100% of churches that couldn't afford it, and they cut that off this year. Where did that money go?
It went into, that's a really good question. I don't know. It was reallocated to different priorities of the diocese. Again, that was a decision that the diocese made that said, what we're going to do for this year we're in now, is keep that same pot of money and make a commitment to the Diocesan Council that we will not go over that amount this year while we evaluate what the best models are for 2027. So they're working, and apparently have submitted, a draft budget now that I'm not exactly sure. I have no idea what those numbers are. I don't have a lot of connection with the budget. But it was the same pot of money. It was just a process through the year of thinking, how can we best serve all the churches in an equitable way? How can we be resourcing and supporting all of the churches rather than saying, here's a pot of money for... Now, if you disagree with that, I'm happy to agree with you that those priorities are things that you as congregations need to take to diocesan convention and to your diocesan council if you feel strongly that things should be done differently. But for now, that money wasn't. It was just left in the giant salary pot, and part of it still pays my salary. I'm just doing different things now. I'm going to other places rather than just living and staying in Carbon County. That makes sense? Okay.
Is there a shortage of priests?
Yep, sorry, Chuck, we're on Zoom here.
Is there a shortage of priest applicants for these churches, or
Yes.
are they hiding somewhere?
No, well, they're probably hiding, but there is a huge shortage of churches in the middle of the country, of clergy looking for work in the middle of the country. Both coasts seem to get all kinds of applicants. I was on a Zoom the other day with diocesan transition officers from around the country, and there was this woman from somewhere, California, saying, yes, we had to send 12 applicants to this church. And I thought, 12? We don't get 12 in 10 years for our opening. And that's very much not, that or New York. Those are, the two coasts are filling their pulpits. Dioceses that have seminaries that are in their states or in their dioceses have a curacy requirement, so they're at least placing their new priests within their diocese for a 2 or 3 year period, and then often they'll stay within those dioceses. But most of the clergy who are graduating from a residence seminary are not looking at rural America. They're not looking at part-time work of any kind. And frankly, it's hard to convince them to look at a multi-point model.
But we also don't go recruit.
What's that?
We also don't go recruit. Because I know when I was in seminary, we had bishops coming from the coasts and other places a lot. Mm. It's partly to come visit their students, their seminarians, but also to come visit and talk to people and get recruits from other
seminaries.
At seminaries.
Yeah, and that I can't speak to that at all.
And we don't do that.
And nowhere does anyone else, at least in these provinces, because it's prohibitive to do. We do have connections with seminaries. We have mailing lists of here's who you need to talk to, send your profile. We have a new platform at the Episcopal Church for candidates and churches. It's called Vocation Hub. It used to be called the OTM profile, for those of the Office of Transition Ministry profile, where someone looking for a job would fill out their profile. I'm willing to go here, and I want this kind of job, and I want this kind of region, and here are my strengths, and here are my gifts. And then on the other side, you have the church that fills out their profile. That was a very clunky, outdated platform. And it's now been replaced and is operating, and I'm very encouraged by it. It's called Vocation Hub. Same general process happening, but it's much easier to now go in, and I can go in as a diocesan transition officer and say, okay, what priests who have registered on here that may be willing to move to Lander, Wyoming, I would enter those criteria. would maybe be a good fit. And then I can reach out to them. So we have but that was about a 3-month process of that being rolled over. And so nothing happened for 3 months. We were just stuck in kind of pause land. And that's what happened part of what happened with Cody. Cody has received a few applicants, but 2 of them were from out of country, which is not it's technically difficult because of the visa requirements now. It's very, very difficult to get someone from the Anglican, it would be the Anglican communion for the most part. And they typically are not of our same mindset. Janet.
Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, it's on now. So in looking at Cody, I know you can't probably say specifically, but what salary range are they expecting they will need to offer to attract a full-time clergy?
I think their starting range is like base salary, 75 to 100,000, and then you add insurance and pension and housing.
So basically that's at least $150,000.
$150,000, easily, yes.
Okay.
And that's in the ballpark. We haven't updated our minimum salaries in Wyoming, the required minimums, but they're above that. They're asking more than that.
I imagine they are, because when we were searching before Jordan, the requesting applicants were requesting far above the amount that we were offering, and as well as when we were at St. Mark's, the request was a lot higher than that.
And I frankly think, in addition to the salary pack, I think their salary package is fairly competitive, and they've said they would negotiate. But the fact that we are a diocese in transition for a bishop matters to applicants as well. Because when you apply for a job, you're looking at who your boss is going to be. And if you don't know who that is and aren't going to know for a year and a half, it becomes, I think it affects it. And I just as a reality, I think. So we're not, we've lucked out on, we haven't we've been able to fill from within for the most part. And the Pinedale, Leanne was just a good fit of someone who wanted a job where she could work 9 months of the year and have 3 months off to go home to Georgia. That's a unique model, but that's what she wanted to do. And that makes it, when she's there, she's full-time. And when she's not there, she doesn't have to be tempted to answer the phone and do things. So, but that was a pretty fortuitous find. So the numbers we hear are that for every full-time clergy opening, there are at least 7 people who, or there's 1 person for every 7 full-time openings.
I just wanted to back up just a little bit to some of the things that you had told us about the diocese is no longer funding priests in certain communities, but yet there are funding the Roxanne over on the reservation. What led the diocesan council to decide on this? These were the ones that were going to be funded or not funded?
It's just the reservation that they're funding.
And why is that?
It's a priority for the diocese to support our Indigenous brothers and sisters, and a reckoning.
So, yeah, Roxanne's outstanding, but part of it is because of the church's the consequences of the church's behavior on the reservation, between boarding schools, et cetera, that part of the ability of those churches to be able to support themselves is directly related to that history. And so part of our obligation, because of not dealing fairly with the people on the reservation, is to make it right. So that's why.
And I will tell you, there are a number of churches that have the minuscule financial resources that either St. David's or St. Michael's have on the reservation. But the priority of the diocese has been that we need to try and make things right. And yeah, Roxanne is fabulous, and she is way overworked, and we need about 3 more of her over there. But at this point, she is the only the only other clergy person who is on staff is Alan Doyle at Canterbury Fellowship, and so that's a program of the diocese. So Canterbury doesn't pay his salary, but he's the campus minister, and so he is compensated as well. Yes. Wait, hold on, get the.
So how could we become a priority? I mean,
I guess I would like to say you are a priority. You're a priority with me. You're a priority along with these other churches who are in transition, and we are trying really hard to figure out a way to provide the resources you need. I think when I was here last time, I talked about an idea that Todd is willing to entertain, where someone would come and consecrate elements for a month, so you could do Eucharist even if you didn't have and not you, Lander, because you've got clergy who can do that. But some of these churches, use Rollins as an example, that someone could go over there once a month, consecrate elements, and communion in the absence of a priest is a service we're looking at that would be able for licensed worship leaders, specially licensed worship leaders, to administer those sacraments, if that's really important to a church. I am a person on staff who doesn't always agree with everything we're doing at the diocese, I will tell you that. But I am still, and so is Randy Belton, we are still promoting this idea that somehow churches need support from the diocese. Whether it's once a month for these churches that are really on the edge, that we send someone to celebrate and preach and do pastoral care. I'm doing a funeral in Torrington Friday because people die and they can do a funeral, but it's hard when you've had a clergy person who's done that for a number of years. So the training, we want to work on training that. We want to talk about, what are you able and willing to do as a church? Are you willing to be those 12 disciples that Jesus said, you go out and do this stuff now. You feed those people. Are we really willing to be Jesus? And so that's kind of how I'm trying to approach this is do we have churches where they have congregations that really can be empowered to do priesthood of the baptized, of all of us? And if not, in some of these little tinier churches, how do we help them gracefully enter hospice and die, if that is what is going to happen? Because I will guarantee you that in the next probably 5 years, some of our churches will have to close. They cannot afford to maintain the buildings they have. They cannot afford the stress of that because there's 3 or 4 people literally trying to hold on. And having a priest there isn't necessarily helping them grow, but maybe having some support there will help them die with dignity, as it were.
There we go. Of the 43 churches in the state, roughly, how many are self-funding currently?
Well, I'll tell you that. It's 45. Okay. We have 45 churches. We have, I don't know if this is your question, Bob, but we have 8 churches that have full-time rectors that they support 100%.
And they're supporting themselves?
Yes, 8 of them. That's St. Luke's Buffalo, St. Mark's Casper, St. Mark's Cheyenne, Christ Church Cody, St. John's Jackson, St. Matthew's Cathedral, Laramie, St. Peter's Sheridan, and St. Albans Warland.
And their secret is? And their secret is basically large.
Their ASA is 150. Their average Sunday attendance across those 8 churches is 115 people. Okay? Their average plate and pledge in 2025 was $390,000 a year for those 8 churches. And their total cash and checking and savings, I pulled these numbers off the Procreate report, is $1.8 million average for those churches to have a full-time rector. And in the case of, to be fair, St. John's Jackson has 4 full-time clergy on staff. They're the outlier there, but the rest of them are, again.
So some of the churches may be close to being self-funding if they'd have a little help, maybe?
I guess I'm not.
I guess what I'm getting at.
How are you defining, what's your question?
Say, the last I heard, we're about 70,000 short of breaking even to be able to fund our own priest, is that correct?
I don't know those numbers anymore. I know I know I saw those projections that we did back in February, and it was within a couple years you could. Part-time, not for, yeah. And let me talk, the next tier is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 churches that have opted to have a part-time rector that they pay. 6, part-time, either half-time or 3/4 time. That includes St. Thomas Du Bois, which I always explained, and these priests that are already retired, that are already past 72, are not eligible for pension. They don't have health insurance, so they're working for basically base salary because they're not also paying into pension if you're already over 72. So that's St. Thomas Du Bois, Trinity Lander, St. Andrews in the Pines Pinedale, Holy Trinity Thermopolis, All Saints Torrington, and Holy Trinity Gillette. And those churches have an average Sunday attendance of 29, which you're right in the ballpark there. Yours was 70. And plate and pledge, an average of $90,000 a year. And total cash checking and saving of $220,000. That's not investments, but that's just your bank account balance at the end of the year.
The diocese has access to a huge amount of money in the foundation, correct?
The foundation has money. The diocese gets a draw. The diocese gets a draw from the foundation to fund the operating. And that was the other thing that happened that they did last year. They held that at the, and again, I'm not familiar with the exact numbers of how that works, but the draw, the 4%, is that right?
They cut it from 4.5 to
4.
So that they can keep the draw the same amount.
Yes. So the amount that they pull from the investment, from the diocese, from the foundation, to fund all the operations of the diocese is 4% of that, and that's a decision that's made.
It is 4.5, but the 0.5 is held to start growing a fund to help with some of the big repairs.
The churches. Big project. So 4 million, 4% of it goes to operating.
Well,
yeah, I forget you're sitting in the room, Shalini. You know these things.
Just food for thought going forward. Why can that funding out of that huge foundation, why couldn't they match the pledge of the churches that may be close to being able to fund themselves to give them a boost? A lot of the people I've talked to, that a church is not a church without a priest. And you got to keep the door open.
And I guess that's something I would like to have this church discuss, because I work with many churches in the diocese who don't have a priest and don't think that that's what's the most important thing for them. And if that's what's important to you, you have to figure out a way to make that happen, and then find somebody who's out there in that 1 to 7 deficit to say, come to our church. I'm not arguing that churches want priests, but I am arguing that a church is not a priest. A church is the people. A church is not this building. The church is the mission of God.
Attract additional congregation.
I was in Rollins for 4.5 years, and I was there almost full time. I mean, I lived there. Their ASA went from 6 to 10, and back down now it's 6 again. Me living there and being involved in everything in that community. And I think I'm a pretty good motivator, but I couldn't grow that church. I couldn't do it. That makes me sad, but it makes me realize that it's not just that. There was a resolution 2 years ago on the floor of the convention to give every church some $45,000, some amount of money, divide something to do exactly sort of what you're saying, to do whatever they wanted to do with, and it failed, and was not, and created, and was the source of great consternation on the floor. But that's not. I bring that up just to say that is not an idea that hasn't and isn't out there under consideration. If you're not happy with how the diocese is spending your money, I encourage you to run for diocesan council, run for foundation seats, come to diocesan convention in Sheridan, October 1st through the 3rd. No one stood up on the floor at all in Rollins when we had convention last year and said a word about the budget. It was adopted. Nobody knew any of this was even in there. Nobody knew these. No one knew these positions were not being funded again. I am not here as the Diocesan Council emissary today. I am here trying to help you all figure out, given the constraints we have, what do you dream? What do you want to do? Janet?
Well, I have a dream that we is not available to us right now. The dream is for all the little churches in Wyoming to have a rector, a part-time rector. I've been on both sides of things. And the reason I say that is because there are so many things that come alive when you have one person up there and the rest of us go out and do mission work and invite people to come in and do Invite, Welcome, Connect. But that's not the only way. You know, we've been in mutual ministry before, and our church in Kemmer went up and down. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the most important things is the body joining together and saying there is a mission that we believe in so much that we think the Episcopal Church is the best way of expressing the Jesus movement. The reality is that we have a provisional bishop right now. We don't have a bishop. Let's say that in that dream, we were to go back and say, you know, at a time, there was a time when we had vicars. There was a time when we had regional missioners whose primary purpose was to go to several of the small churches and say, you guys need to call up people from your midst. Call up, like Shalini's doing, call up a priest in your midst. Call up worship leaders. Call up all the baptized ministry positions and go to work. And that is perhaps where, for now, that's where we're at. I would like to say, my dream is that somehow with the foundation we could form some kind of a task force to do that work of figuring out, maybe it's not regional missioners anymore, maybe it's something else. But I believe so much in the Episcopal Church that I want it to continue. And I've seen what it's like when you have a point person. And as we look at the possibility of mutual ministry, you need a point person. It doesn't have to be a priest, but we can still grow. It's just, how do we feel God calling us and pulling us into commitment in all of it? Mm-hmm. Because it can work both ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love it if we had a rector and everyone, not because that you need a rector, because you need the people. The people got to do the work. The people got to be the ones who are sent out and claim their baptized ministry and do stuff. It just, to me, it helps if you can have that point person, because somebody can call in the office. Somebody can call in and say, oh, this is the person we're going to call to go to Rotary. This is the person we're going to call to do the funeral. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, we may jump to that, but it can still be done other ways, and that's the creative part. But I think part of it is that I'm saying is whatever we decide, there needs to be some work done with the foundation and the diocese to say, we're not just going to be available to the little churches, we're going to be a creative force that helps make a new movement in Wyoming so that we can grow. You know, we see, like today I went to a funeral. This church has 300 people that come to it. But the message there is not the Jesus movement, progressive message of love that I see coming out of this church. So I don't know the answers, but I think we got to all pull together, and there needs to be a larger message go up that if we want these little churches to survive, we're going to have to figure out another model, not just have a resolution that came through that one year and said, oh, the foundation needs to give money to the churches. It needs to be a bigger vision, a bigger vision. And I think that's something I would like to see taken up. I've not been in some of the bishop meetings that have been going on, but that's a message I would like taken up.
One of the things that I heard the other day, again, when I was on this call, we were, because this is not just Wyoming, and it's not just this denomination, but these were Episcopal diocesan transition officers saying, you know, we've got churches, in a lot of our dioceses, we have a lot of retired clergy. There are several that offered up that what their bishops require of their retired priests in order to continue to license them is that they agree to serve another church in the diocese 3 times a year or once a month, or, you know, there are different models of that. But I thought, you know, that's a hook that a bishop has, because a bishop can choose to license or not someone who's over 7, who's retired, who is.
The bishops could do the same thing. They remain a bishop, they commit to go serve somewhere.
Well, ours did. Todd did. Yeah, he's here. Anyway, so there are some my point is that there may be some creative ways to not have our clergy that are here be so tied to where they were raised up, maybe. You know, I mean, you and Walt went all over the place initially when you left here. I mean, you did interim work in several places. I don't see a reason why we can't realize that these churches that have $500,000 sitting in a bank account can't help each other. I mean, why do we have to just go, sucks to be you, Lander, you can't afford a rector, too bad, we're sitting up here in Jackson, just, and I think that, so that's a whole mindset too. And again, it's not something you can dictate, it's something that has to develop organically through relationships. And I hope it's something that we'll talk about at our clergy conference, because I think those are important things. Walt.
I just wanted to say a couple things. One is, in the overall picture here at Trinity, we have everything we need to be the church here today. We did yesterday, we do today, and we will tomorrow. Mm-hmm. What we need to know is something that the diocese over the years has walked away from. This is about the 3rd time when they've started eliminating positions that support mutual ministry. Mm-hmm. And that sends a mixed message. If you're on the cusp and you're looking, like in this case, going back to mutual ministry, it's a bad look for the diocese to be cutting back on resources. I can really relate to the kind of work that you do and how you're getting stretched, okay?
Yeah, you were one of those.
Okay, so I totally get that. But that's a bad message if more and more the diocese wants to encourage congregations to go to mutual ministry, but they are backing away from the support. And it surely cannot be
And I will tell
monetary.
you all, 100% I agree with you. I am beating that drum. Randy Belton and I are beating that drum every day. That doesn't mean anything will change, but I absolutely 100% say if we're going to empower the laity and empower and encourage shared ministry, we have got to help these churches with the resources they need, because they can't just wake up and say, let's just do all this.
We are already reaping what we have sown. Because we backed away from that, and because we walked away from that intentional ministry development work in congregations to develop the second generation, third generation, fourth generation, we have so many clergy retiring, and now you don't know what you're going to do behind them. We had something in place several times, a couple iterations to do that work.
Is everyone familiar with the ministry developer model that Walt's talking about? It was a I think fabulous way of doing exactly what we're talking about, supporting all the churches by having a staff person from each region that worked for all the churches in that region as a full-time, it was full-time, right? Full-time staff position.
No. At one point it was full-time, and then it went down to about 3 people, and then when we got a new bishop, they decided it'd be better to have 6 half-time people than 3 full-time people, which you can argue.
And now we're back to 3 full-time people.
Right.
Going, what are we? Anyway, I think there is a lack of there's a lack of vision. There's a lack of a strategic plan at the diocese, which is my personal. I feel your pain. I feel your pain. I'm sorry. Don't put this out on the. I do feel your pain, because I really see, I think what we had and what we did was we created, and that was the focus on raising up through the Iona Collaborative local clergy. And then the thought was, well, these churches don't have to help themselves because they're just using the ministry developers to do communion once a month. And I say, so what? That's fine. That gets them communion once a month, and it gives them some support and some formation and some pastoral care and some education.
I was also a ministry developer, and that actually was not, I mean, yes, for while you're doing discernment, which takes time, and I think that's part of it, is we end up with these quick timelines of, in a year, you're going to have all these people ready to go through the process.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time for discerning people, and
yes.
You know, my personal thing is, the vast majority of clergy anywhere come out of small and medium-sized, mostly small churches. So Wyoming is the perfect place to raise up new clergy. If we sow that, you know, if we fertilize the ground and sow the seeds, and we're patient enough for it to grow, and then we keep doing it. But you're exactly right,
and keep supporting
Walt.
them.
We get one crop and then we quit.
I think we ordained.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like it's like when you mow a field and you don't reseed it, stuff still comes up, but you get less every year.
Yeah.
And so
the good
eventually
news
you don't
is,
get
I mean,
anything.
how many in your Iona class this year? 3? 1. I mean, in all of Iona, 1? But two graduated, right?
Yeah.
But we have a new dean of the Iona School that will prioritize that, and Elle will get out there. We've had a lack of focus in that area, I think, and that shows.
But I also want to agree that we can do this, and it's you know, it is not a model to be afraid of. The idea that we are by our baptism. I'm going to quote Jordan today from his baptism sermon yesterday. By our baptism, we are, each and every one of us, baptized as prophets, as priests, and as royalty of God. Each and every one of us. And so we have to take that on. We have to be willing to own that and embrace that And if we're willing to embrace that, in whatever that looks like in our individual contexts, we don't have to worry about the church dying.
Right.
We don't have to worry about the church struggling. And we may not have a whole lot of bodies in the pews, but we will have a strong church in the world. So that's, but we have to know who we are.
Exactly.
We have to know who we are. And if we know that, one of the things we can do, as you keep saying, Bobby, is we have to be involved. Because it's not enough to be involved here. It's just like everything else. If you're not involved on the county level, and you're not involved on the state level, and you're not involved on the federal level, things are going to look bad. Because you have to make your wants and needs known on every level, and you have to speak up, and you have to show up. So if you have never been to diocesan convention, this year is your year.
And there are budget and pre-convention.
Pre-convention, you need to go.
Where's your site? Is it here or is
Riverton?
It Riverton? Go to pre-convention, not just for delegates.
Go through. That's when they go through the budget, or not, as happened last year. But that's also when you get to hold people to account for what they're not telling you. You have to show up, and you have to participate. You have to read those emails that come out. You have to read the Spirit of Wyoming when it comes out. It will tell you what's going on the diocesan level and what kinds of decisions are being made and what people's thinking is. If you do not know what those are, you can't act in a timely fashion. And they assume everything is fine.
How many of you were able to attend one of the bishop search listening sessions? 3 of you? There is still time to get your input in. You can text or email Jordan, who's the co-chair of the search committee, or there's a couple of them in Jackson. There's Sue Rector over in Riverton is on the search committee. She'd be, I'm sure, happy to come over and do I have been telling people, you have got to let your needs known as churches that are in transition. Because if you don't tell, if that doesn't become part of the profile, that we need a bishop who will pay attention to these needs.
Perhaps that can be one of the outcomes of this meeting. Is that we invite Sue to come over.
Invite Sue to come over, yeah.
That might be a good one. Yeah.
Gail.
So there is a rector in Riverton.
A priest in charge who is non-stipendiary. Yeah, sorry. Oh. That's her last name is Rector.
So Amy is a priest in
yes.
charge.
And isn't she just a local priest? Is she priest in charge?
She's priest in charge. I mean, she's a teacher, retired teacher.
Has anybody talked to her about serving 2 parishes? I know when I served a parish in Roseburg, Oregon, and I wanted to have some time to travel, so I took a 2/3 position, and I worked months in a row, and then I would take 3 or 4 weeks off. And then the ELCA Lutheran Church, their pastor left and took a different call. Well, there were no other interim pastors in Southern Oregon, and they knew that I was a Lutheran pastor, and so they asked me if I would help them out for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and I wanted to, but it was hard work. So I think maybe has anybody approached
Amy is a non-compensated priest. She does not get paid to serve that church. She also is over 72. And in my head is, Amy, what are your plans? What's this church going to do? Is there a way we can, I know we were talking about this at dinner tonight, that Riverton and Lander, Wolverines and tigers are not, but is there a way that where it makes sense we can share clergy? That's what I'm trying to do with Thermopolis and Warland, is look down the road and say, when we call a new rector up there, let's call a full-time rector who serves 2 churches. Let's call it, and I don't know if Riverton has thought about their financial capacity. They're, like I said, they're they don't pay a priest and haven't paid a priest for a long, long time. Your nearest priest that's paid is now probably Pamela in Thermopolis, or Dubois, Bonnie in Dubois, who is part-time. So they're both part-time already. So, but again, what you're talking about, Gail, is how I'm thinking we're going to have to start, if we're going to get a priest in serving every church, that's a regular person. Now again, a regular presence, the same person that you're familiar with. Glen Rock has, this system where they have 4 different people that serve them every month. So they know the same 4 people. But there are not a lot of supply priests either, which is my other problem as a transition officer. Is when Torrington opened, there is not another priest over there in the Diocese of Wyoming closer than Cheyenne or Wheatland, if you count Lori Modisett, who's not here 9 months of the year. So it's there are places that are clergy deserts, I guess.
I would say if you're going to share a priest in a couple congregations, you're still going to have to do most of the work that you would do for mutual ministry, because a priest cannot come in and serve 2 places and do all of the work that a priest would do in one place. So you still have to have people pick up a lot of the ministry like you would in mutual ministry. So even if we found ourselves in that situation, we still have to do the work of figuring out how we become the church.
Absolutely. And I had one meeting with the vestries of Worland and Thermopolis, and we just talked through the kinds of questions you need to each look at. And what's the number one first thing people have to decide if they're going to share a priest? What time do we have Sunday morning service? And where do they live? And typically it's going to be, if you've got a rectory, that's where you live. But my point is, there are those resources out there to help churches do that if they're willing to. But you're right, it's a process of saying we've got to be part of that solution, because we've got to figure out what's important to us. And I will tell you, Thermopolis did a fabulous job with what is important to us. Thermopolis is a mutual ministry church that wants a part-time rector to support them but not do for them. They drew a firm line. And I would, maybe on our list of other things we should do is have John Anderson come over, and did he? Because that is, they're a success story, and they do the work. I mean, they work hard, and it's not in the walls of that church. It's out in that community. They make a difference in that community. That's where they shine. And they didn't want a rector to get in their way with that. They just want that encouragement and that support, and they want somebody to celebrate the Eucharist, and they've got 3 or 4 preachers that are licensed that, and Pamela doesn't have to preach every Sunday. They don't want her to preach every Sunday because they like hearing different voices. So you have to decide, what do we want? Do we want the same person standing up here week after week? Maybe you do. Figure out how to make that happen.
As part of our committee, we did talk to a lot of different churches, and I talked to them. They have the money to have a full-time priest. They didn't want one.
Right.
And just talking through how they decided that was really eye-opening to me, is because of the ministries that they were doing. Like, we have so many ministries in this church, and we look like we're sleeping compared to them. And but they have active people that want to do that, and they want a spiritual leader that can answer those questions that they can go to. But exactly like you said, they don't want somebody to come in and change what they're doing successfully in their missions, which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah, what about some of those other churches? I forgot you did that. You all called other churches. Who else did you talk to? Any other good ideas from?
Most of our
committee is not here today.
Okay.
And I talked to Glen Rock.
Okay.
Which is kind of, in talking to Katie Mosier, she feels like they're kind of figuring out their identity. Mm-hmm. From what you say, it sounds like they're further along from what she said to me. But I think Jeannie's been a great help to them there.
Glen Rock has evolved because they went from a church where their primary clergy presence was Lee Earle, who was a deacon. But they had a priest almost every week because that was their priority. Glen Rock's congregation, at the time I was serving them once in a while, was like 80% living in Casper. They don't live in Glen Rock. Their church grew when a bunch of them left St. Mark's Casper over a rector they had there. And so they're not out in the Glen Rock community, but they're out in the greater community, I guess. And yeah, they're more, what do we do Sunday mornings?
Right. And I think a lot of churches that we talk to, including Thermop and Du Bois, have kind of felt like, at least what they've told our people is, do not be scared of this. This is a good thing. And Lander is the perfect place for mutual ministry. So people need to not, and even the priest at Saratoga, or it might have been
Peggy.
Yeah, told, I can't remember who had that, but they were like, no, Lander's got this. You guys should not be scared of this because you guys have the parts and pieces to be successful, which, still leaves, that's separate from the rector question, but that actually started me moving towards ministry was, when Walt and Janet came, I was like, how do we go from two people doing, both of you all the time? And I was like, wait a second, we have one person coming, but he cannot do the work of two people. And so as you left is only when I became senior warden, kind of feeling that there's stuff to be done here. And that moved from that into, okay, what else does Trinity need? And
Torrington is an example of, Torrington had 3 priests in charge in a row that were sent to them. I mean, they didn't do a search since whoever was before Brian Gross, but Brian Gross was sent there as their priest in charge. He then went to the cathedral. Diane Carlton was sent there as their priest in charge. She unfortunately passed away. And then Kenley Barling was sent there minutes after Diane died. I mean, she was moving in as Guy was moving things out of the house as their priest in charge. And they didn't ever have an opportunity to say, is this really what we want? Is this, I mean, not this person, but is this really how we want to keep doing this? And they then, because Brian had done everything for them, they assumed Diane would do everything for them. And then they assumed Kenley would do everything for them. And it wasn't, they weren't bad people, they just didn't know any different. And so now their senior warden is doing everything for them. I mean, so we don't have the same dynamics in every church, I guess, is what I'm saying. And so it's important that we decide as a congregation, who are we and what's important to us? And what resources do we have that can help us? And what can we go pound on the door at the diocese about and say, how are you going to help us? We are willing to help ourselves. Here's our check, here's what we can do. But we need a little help. And it may be nothing more, Walt, than having a more regular, I mean, I'm sorry, I haven't been here since February. I thought I was planning to come once a month. I don't know how that, but how does what we have now, because until we get a new bishop, I don't see that a whole lot's gonna change. But we gotta keep the pressure on and make sure that the profile for a new bishop includes the kind of support we think we need, and we're willing to use mutual ministry and be the priesthood of all the baptized. We embrace that, we think that's great, but don't just help us and then leave and then change your mind and do something different. I'm sorry, Shalini.
I was going to say 2 things. One is that, and that's what this is independent of whether or not we have a rector, but one of the things I see in common with the churches that are being successful with mutual ministry, which includes Thermop and Pinedale, which have rectors. So this is irregardless of that, is that those are churches that find their community outreach important to them. And when Margaret and I did the small groups back in March, that was a consistent theme we heard from people who attend this church, is that community outreach is important. So aside from Rector, I think we can be successful at mutual ministry because we share a lot of the same traits. Even Powell community outreach is important.
Yes, exactly.
So then after that is the discussion of the other part, but I think mutual ministry is, at least to me, part of our answer. And the second thing I will say is that I do plan, I've already had some conversations at my subcommittee meeting at the foundation, starting to plant some seeds at the foundation. I don't know what it looks like, because this is going to take time, and three of the three major committees of the diocese all coming to the same place. But I do plan to ask that there is time for some discussion about the fact that a large majority of churches have to do, whether it's some form of mutual ministry. So the foundation should be finding ways to support that. It may not look like what we think it should look like, but helping churches figure out how to be successful given where we are.
And I think there's at least some opportunity with the foundation to say, this idea of not providing funding for operations that's where our needs are right now. Yeah, we can get a grant to put a new roof on, but if we don't have people in the pews to support that roof, it doesn't solve us. Linda.
I also talked to some of the churches in around the state. And I think one of the most common threads that I got out of that was those churches felt a strong sense of community. I talked to people in Rollins, like 7 of them, and they meet in the back room of their thrift store.
Yes.
And it's important to them to meet. And they meet for barbecues in the summer when they're haying and they have to change their schedule. And they're all on the vestry. Every single one of them are on the vestry. So we have that sense of community here. We just haven't been asked to use all the gifts that we have for a while.
Right, right.
The first time we went to mutual ministry, we all got really tired. Walt and Janet came and we just dumped on them. That's a true story. We just dumped on them, and then they took really good care of us, and then things changed, and we forgot how to be the people who do things. But we have that capability. But that was the really strong message that I got from each of the churches that I talked to, is they saw themselves as a community, as a family that took care of each other and took care of the church. I think we have that potential. I think we do it already. We just are dancing with a little bit of fear right now.
And see, to me, that's a grant request that'll sell at the foundation, absent whatever their program requirements are, that we're willing to do the work. We just need a little financial help. And yes, it might be every year we need this much money to have these and such trainings and whatever it is that we're doing to support. Or we want to do this outreach, but if we're having to pay a regular supply priest twice a month, it's this much. Can we at least get the help? I mean, there are different ways that I would just start hammering the foundation with grant requests for how do we, what we really need is on the ground in our church support, not big initiatives that, we're just wanting some bread and butter stuff, folks, and we're willing to do the work.
And I have to say, in conjunction with what Linda was saying, our children asked us when we got done and retired to come move by them. This community was so special to us, and this sense of all the things we do together and individually and the different interests and the diversity we have. We just couldn't do that. I mean, this community has something so special that we offer together and outside of these walls. And we just got to figure out how to do it. And I think we can. We can. We just got to figure out the logistics of it. And then perhaps, the decision, whatever decision is made, if we decide to go fully into mutual ministry, it's like, well, we just divide it up and people say yes, you come to the decision like, I was second generation in Walt was regional missioner over in Kemmer, and part of his job was to raise up second generation. So he would go around to all those churches in his employ, and Melinda, you did this too. You go around to all the churches in your area, and you look at building people up. What is in that baptismal ministry? And God calls people. They are equipped later, perhaps, but the exciting part is the call. And something that God calls you to do that I don't know if I can do that. And your brothers and sisters see those gifts in you and say, yeah. You could do that. When at St. James, when Walt prepared that gifts ministry thing, it was like, in that congregation, who do you see as this, this, and this? A teacher, a preacher, a priest, or whatever. And it was like, there were me and another person that were seen as possible priests. And for me, it was like, And then I thought, well, okay, God, if you want this to happen, I'm willing.
And I don't know how many of our churches have done that kind of discernment process because that's how I was discerned too, was Lori Modisett, who was our ministry developer, preaching a sermon one day saying, I want you to pray as a congregation about who you see called to serve this church in what capacity. Put their name down and what that is in this bucket on the altar, and on Easter Sunday, I'm going to take that to the bishop. And that's how I was encouraged and so yeah, I think there are ways that we can do that.
And the part of it
who had that shirt? Jeremy does. We can do hard things, right?
We can, and we can do things we're not quite sure of. I mean, I don't have the most forceful personality at all, but it's like God was calling me to do something, and I might not have been great at it or whatever else, but there's things God does in equipping people, and the fact that we're supportive, forgiving, encouraging, and we grow.
God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Yeah. Exactly. And that's something we really, there's a lot scripturally that supports what we're doing, folks. That's why we really want to try and do this organically and not say, here's what we're going to do now from the diocese. We're going to do this for Trinity Lander. We're not going to do that. We want you to be partners in that.
Oh, the light. One of the things that concerns me is that the people there's people here who are already doing so much, and how you can get more out of them, I'm not sure. And not that they don't want to, but that they're, stretched pretty far as it is. So, I don't know. I think we need young people. I agree.
Don't we all?
So one of the things I will say is we have a lot of people here. We have a lot of people here who do things. We have a lot of people who come on Sundays who have not been asked to do things or invited to do things. We dance around it. We treat people like guests. When you come into this church, you might be a guest for a few Sundays. You shouldn't be a guest for more than a month or two. Mm-hmm. At some point, somebody should be inviting you to do a job and offering to teach you how to do it so they don't have to tell you how to do it every time. Because that's part of being part of a community. That's part of being part of a family. Is, when you come over to somebody's house as a guest, they do all the stuff. You sit on the couch and wait for them to be done, and that's all special, but you're not family. When you're family, you help make it happen. So that is one thing that Trinity and a lot of congregations struggle with, because you get in that, oh, well, we don't want to ask too much. We don't want to put too much pressure on people. People just come. However, whenever you can come, and we know you're busy, so we're not going to ask you to do anything. And you know what? All those other organizations out there that they belong to don't care if they're already busy. They're saying, we need you to do this because we want you to be part of us. And that's part of the transition that we need to make. Part of what makes that easier too, because this is one of my personal things, is everything that goes on here that is a job, you need to have written down the instructions of how to do it and posted. So that if you have somebody you're inviting to be on Altar Guild, yes, you're going to show them and shepherd them through learning. It's written down back there in the sacristy, every single step. So they don't have to be afraid they're going to screw up. It's all written down. And then they can do it. In the kitchen, every step about how you clean it up and what's required. So it's written down, and people don't worry about forgetting. And you can have them do it. Because that's part of what it is to be in family, is you teach people how you do stuff, then you give them the responsibility, and you do something else.
Which is often some of the hardest part about, especially altar guilds, you know. You can't do it right. But that's what Walt's talking about with this next generation. We have to, yes, we look at ourselves and think, wow, there's a lot of gray hairs in here. How do we build up that? We can't make more kids, as a general rule, those of us in this room. But how do we create a vibrant church where we are? Who do we invite to join us? Thank you for coming. Gail, I'll see you in August at the clergy conference, not before. Okay, good. When I was here in February, and I think you've all seen this, but there were some things we were going to do as next steps, and I'd kind of like to review those and decide if these are things that we're still thinking are helpful, and if so, we'll track through that, and then what our next steps are. So we were going to reconvene the focus groups to inform and educate the entire congregation about the realities of clergy compensation and the limitations of Trinity to meet those financial obligations without supplemental funding. Collate feedback and develop consensus of preferred alternatives given financial realities. And I think you've pretty much done a lot of that work. Recruit current and newly interested laity to attend an orientation to lay ministry presented by me. We haven't done that. Schedule specific lay ministry trainings for worship leaders, lay Eucharistic ministers, and others. We haven't done that, right? Continue to support and encourage Shalanee's ongoing formation through Iona. We're doing that. You go, girl. You go, girl. Okay. Again, that's a long game. Okay, cool, good. Hold conversation with retired clergy in Trinity congregation to clarify their willingness to serve and in what capacity. Eucharist, preaching, frequency, pastoral care, etc. Have they had this conversation with you, Walt and Janet?
So to be clear, I have done Janet and Gail, and while I was waiting to be recovered.
I was physically unable.
Yeah.
True,
Yeah.
yes.
I couldn't stand for
Yeah.
more than 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So Walt's on
That
my
is maybe changing.
I hope so. Yeah. Dang it. That is the problem. Curate a list of available supply clergy who would be willing to provide priestly duties on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, supplemented by locally empowered and trained lay ministers. I think we're working towards that. We really are. Evaluate multi-point parish models with shared clergy between neighboring churches or communities. Again, a long game, but something I think we at least need to look at. Explore ways to increase financial stability through higher pledges, increase membership, Holy Spirit intervention that would allow Trinity to consider retention of a paid rector again. I mean, that's an option on the table. It is. Lean on the gifts and abilities of your interim rector to help with this process of discernment and formation. And I know you are and do that. And in all things pray, we said. So I think you've got a game plan. We just need to circle back and decide if we're willing, and Melinda if we're willing to do the work, because it's not, we don't have clergy falling out of the sky. Even if you convince the diocese, we want you to once again supplement a priest somehow. You know, we're all around the diocese. We want every church that can't afford a full-time rector to at least have the option of 50-50 or whatever the plan may be. We still can't find priests to come to Wyoming. And it's not just Wyoming, it's Province 5, 6, 7. It's mid-country is not, the model is not for seminary-trained clergy coming out of residential seminaries. The model across the diocese, or across the country, is more locally raised up through programs like the Iona Collaborative, if not the Iona Collaborative, or then clergy who are bivocational, who work as the UPS driver and preach on Sundays. And that's a model of many churches, or are doctors and wander into on their day off. And I mean, that is a model that we're, and I think you've all seen, I think that sheet, I think Shalini handed that out again, but like I said, we have 8 rectors, priests in charge that are full-time in the diocese, 6 part-time, which are half or 3/4 time. 20 churches are non-stipendiary, so almost half of our churches are led by a clergy person who either has another job or who themselves are already retired and are not paid at all by that church. 9 that are no clergy led now of that original 13 number, and then 2 that are diocesan supported, the 2 that are on the reservation. And that gives you 45 churches. So our model in Wyoming, and it's very similar in our surrounding areas. Colorado's a little bit different because they're a little more metro area, but their rural areas are very similar. Nebraska, South Dakota. If you want to feel good about Wyoming, talk to Lauren Stanley in South Dakota, where you've got the Rosebud Reservation and 2 clergy to serve, 800. It's a nightmare. They don't have any money either. I mean, it's her and the bishop is their staff, and she's the canon to the ordinary. So we're fortunate. Montana doesn't have much money as a diocese. They've got a really small staff. We're fortunate because we do have money. So we need to figure out how to channel it the way we want it channeled. We the people, not from above. We don't want a hierarchy like that. We want to be able to build up what we can do. What else do you want to, what are your other questions? This was not the direction I was thinking we were going tonight, so but I think it was important that we have this discussion. So what are the next steps now that you think, that you want me to take back to the diocese, that you want me to come back and help work on, that you guys need to cogitate? What do y'all think? You're just saying, good question. Mm-hmm. But I'm walking now, but I've just been injured for 2.5 years with certain broken bones and all that. So, but I just think we did have some younger people coming. I don't know if they still are.
They still are.
That's great.
We just had a family move, but we've actually had several new people coming.
And that's great.
Yeah.
I think our ASA projections, so our average Sunday attendance has increased so much.
Yeah, 33 was your reported ASA in 2025. And that's pretty solid. I mean, that's a... And that is, again, right in there among these churches in that part-time rector kind of model. You're in the hunt for that.
Not having a rector, a priest. I'll be honest with you. I'm just telling you like it is. I came from the Catholic Church, you know, and I call this Catholic life. You know.
Many do.
So, but
Yeah, I mean, the Catholic Church just drops their priests in and has a whole bunch of money that pays for all of that, I think. I don't know how that works, but...
yeah, I know.
And those priests serve 6 or 7, 8 churches in a weekend. They're...
I mean, that's the thing is they're not, I know at least in Wyoming, they're not one priest per church.
And most of them, many of them now, are from the Philippines, or they're coming from other places where they've ordained a bunch of Catholic priests. So that's been a challenge for. Yes.
I've been rather quiet. I'm the oldest person here, and when Cass spoke, that's exactly how I feel. I'm not afraid of mutual ministry, but there's some of us that are aging. We're all aging. I feel like I'm aging, and what Cass said is I really feel it's hard to spread the work around.
What do you think mutual ministry is? Okay, is that hard? I'm maybe the term is scaring us, and maybe it's not so much. What does mutual ministry mean to you?
So I'm somewhat familiar with it just from being on vestry now. And we did it
before Walt and Janet were here. And it's filling ministry roles during Sunday services, and it's also serving other church roles throughout the week. And we can do that, but since you were here the last time, we haven't even been able to organize every Sunday to have a greeter, every Sunday to have an acolyte, every Sunday to have the person who helps give communion. So first of all, we need an organizer,
Okay.
more than anything. But, this building is so big, and this property is so big that some of the physical needs take everyone's energy, and then they're too tired to come to church. And it's true. So, first of all, I guess we just need somebody who says, oh, we can do mutual ministry, and all get us going. Because it's not.
Does that person have to be a 3/4 time ordained?
Not at all.
Priest? No, not.
But we should have
Exactly,
mutual
yeah.
ministry with or without
Exactly.
a rector. We should
And
have an
that's-
acolyte every week. We should have it, whatever. But
You don't have to have, if you have a full-time rector even, you shouldn't
Right.
have an expectation, if you have a culture of mutual ministry that says the rector does everything. The rector calls the plumber when the toilet backs up, the rector, it should be, you should have a junior warden, or, in a perfect world, you would not, a rector would do the things the
but
priests
so
are
far we
needed for.
we can't even fill our vestry right now. So that's how much people are not stepping forward and saying, I'll do it. Fortunately, Jeremy is stepping forward. Thank you. You can be 2 people, I think.
Yeah. See, I've got a list, a little forced choice exercise that I was thinking of doing, but I'm not going to. But these are the things a parish priest is expected to do, no matter what percentage of time. This is what a parish priest. Sunday liturgy. A priest is the celebrant. Okay, if you have communion, a priest is a celebrant. So that they need to spend time preparing for that service, and however much of that service is prepared by the priest is up to a church. You don't have to do that. If you have a good worship committee, the priest drops right in and says, all right, I pick up at Eucharist, and and that's where we are. Melinda, I know, does, for the most part, a lot of the bulletin. Ron Lee works on, but that's an admin kind of thing, right? Sermon preparation. Typically, a priest, if you have a priest here, you want them to preach. That's great. You have other people who can preach and are. You can read sermons at work, which is great sermons, mostly. Pastoral care. We expect our priests to provide at least a level of the pastoral care in our communities, right? Visiting the sick, excuse me, counseling, having coffee with people, the pastoral care kinds of things. But again, you can have lay Eucharistic visitors that do that. And that's a ministry that churches should have. Funerals, I talked about funerals. Lots of times the people the families of those who die want to have a caller, but they typically are not having Eucharist as part of a funeral. So you don't have to have a priest to do a funeral. If you have capable lay leaders, they can do that, or we can help with that. Prayer. You want your clergy person to be the spiritual guide, right? This center of prayer, and know that if I need prayed for, I can call you and you'll do that. Formation, the education piece, answering liturgical questions and theological questions because of some level of training we have, directing, helping those in discernment, leadership training for the various liturgies and the various ministries you have. And then pastoral liturgies themselves, funerals and weddings and baptisms. And you have to have a priest for a baptism, you have to have a priest for a wedding. But again, how many weddings have we had lately in this church? Probably as many as in any of my churches. Not very many, probably, sadly. People get married on mountains and things. But as pastor, the priest makes regular parish home calls, makes regular calls on shut-ins, makes routine hospital calls, takes part in social engagement with parishioners. These are things that I think you need to decide, can we do without this if we don't have a regular person? Building relationships, counseling is often a big thing for a reason why you would want to have a priest who had office hours if you need some counseling. Spiritual leader, spiritual growth, Bible studies, prayer groups. Again, you don't have to have a priest do that, but it's something that we often ask them to do. Active in the community, that's how you grow the church. I hear people, if you're out in the community, we know that Melinda is the current rector at Trinity, because she's got this collar on, and I know that, so that's interesting to me, okay? You're out in the community doing that. As a teacher, the priest teaches, adult ed, children or youth if you've got some. Weekday services, if you have those. As the rector, the priest makes the decisions about the building, about the facility, about the vestry. Lay leadership, parish finances, all the kind of unexciting stuff that has to happen because you have a building. Stewardship. If you need to have a priest doing all of those things, then we need to think through that. If if some of what I read is like, well, I can do that, or why do we have to have someone who's a clergy person for again, I think all of those admin building maintenance things that sometimes weigh down a more full-time kind of rector. If a rector can just be focused on the spiritual growth of their parish. And again, you may decide we're going to figure out where our finances are, and maybe somebody's suddenly going to say, here's my entire estate, and you can, and good on you if that happens. And then I'll try and help you find a person to fill that. And if you decide you want to call a part-time rector, if you want to do that, we'll start working towards that. Okay, we'll do that vocation hub profile. And I think that was the other thing I was going to suggest tonight. I think it would be helpful if we did that anyway, because it's new questions that allow you to see who you are. And whether or not you're actually going to seek a rector, or whether you're seeking to engage yourself in a higher level of mutual ministry, I think it's an important exercise to know who you are and what your gifts and what your capabilities are and what your priorities are. Are they out in the community? Are they in this building? Are we just tired and just want some support for a while? Because that's okay to admit that. And then we figure out how to encourage. And you know this about me, I think. I'm an encourager. I want to pep you up, and I will help you all I can. And I've told Todd that when I retire, which I get to be 72 sometime in the next year, and I'm going to retire. But I want to do supply. I want to do that because we don't have enough of us out there. I love being in a church on a weekend. I love doing that. I'm hoping there'll be others like me that are willing to come in once or twice a month on a regular basis. So you know that the third Sunday is always going to be Bobby, or the second, so that you have some sense of someone who served your church, whether it's living in the community or being here for a few days, or being here bookend weeks weekends between a week, depending on what kind of model you can look at. There are different ways we can get you clergy support. I do not think you're a church that wants to just not have anybody at all serving you, and that's not what I'm suggesting to any of our churches. I think that's hard. The fact that we have 9 churches who have absolutely no clergy, retired or otherwise, is not a good thing. It's really exhausting for them. And they feel a little hopeless sometimes. So we're trying to help them. What do you think, Lorna?
Oh, there was a lot to think about. I hear off and on, but this community means, this church means a lot to me, even though I'm probably not here every Sunday. Every person here is...
You love this community.
I love this community.
You collectively love this community, and don't let go of that. That's why that's what Jesus wants us to do, is gather in community. It's why Jesus didn't say, go home and work on Zoom all the time, or do your church up on your mountain hike every single Sunday. That's great, but we're made to be in community. That's where we're strongest. And maybe we're tired because we're getting old, and maybe we're trying to do too many things. So let's figure out what's really important to us. Is it really, really important that we have a greeter every Sunday, or can somehow that be handled otherwise? Just as an example, are we trying to? What do we need to keep? And you do that when you do a ministry review. What do we keep? What can we let go of? The happiest day of Christ Church Douglas's life was the year that our bathrooms were being remodeled, and we had to cancel our pancake supper for Shrove Tuesday, and thought, cool, we don't have to actually do this. Let's not do this anymore ever again. Because we were tired. And it was the same, you know. So we got lots of resources to process these things. And you've got two people sitting right here who have some of those experiences and are able to help facilitate that. I mean, Walt was a ministry developer and knows how to do these things. And if he's, you know, able to kind of jump back in a little bit again, we can twist some arms here.
Pretty simple for me. What do we have to do to get a full-time priest?
Come up with at least 100,000.
150,000 on a 5-year. I mean, the diocese will typically not allow you to enter a search unless you're able to support that for a 5-year period. You can't just say, we'll get one and figure it out. You have to show projections, solid projections. And then we recruit them. And then you're like Cody, where they've been 1.5 years without a viable candidate. They've interviewed a couple that just were not a good fit. They're not. So it's a financial and a.
Cody can afford it.
Cody can. Yeah, they've got the money. They've got the money. We just can't. We've been advertising for, well, I started doing this job in October, and we've advertised since then. I mean, they've been open because they were working on their profile. You have to do all that, but we've not, in the 6-8 months that they've been actively seeking, they've had probably 4 applicants total for a full-time rector position in Cody, Wyoming, which should be a really, yeah, it should be. East entrance to Yellowstone. I tell you, I mean, when I get on the phone with my transition officers, they say, Cody's still open? If I were looking for a job, I'd come. You have sold that job to us. But there are just not a lot of, and Melinda's right, the ways that folks used to recruit, and the fact that we don't have an actual diocesan bishop hurts us in more ways than than someone looking at our website and saying, oh, they don't have a bishop, I'm not sure I want to go there. But a bishop would have more contacts around the nation that could maybe think, you know, twist arms with other bishops. I am just I'm just meeting these people that I'm working with, diocesan transition officers, and I talk about it all the time, but I can only do so much. I don't have a big network of clergy around the country that I can reach out to, and it's hard. It's hard to find them. And there's not out there, too. It's the reality.
Are there other denominations of churches that are having the same kind of problems? Are there churches that are growing?
Every mainline Protestant denomination has the exact same problem. And I would encourage you, I meant to bring my copy of it tonight. I encourage you to read a book by Stephanie Spellers, who was the canon for Michael Curry for 9 years when he was presiding bishop. It's called Church Tomorrow, and it's got a question mark. What we can learn from the nuns and duns. Those who have not, nuns and the duns. And duns are those who are done with organized religion. The nuns are those who've never gotten into going to church on a Sunday morning. But it's a fascinating book, and it has all that data about, you know, even the evangelical churches are now starting to lose membership, but the mainline denominations have lost huge numbers of folks. Wyoming, you say we had 5,500 Episcopalians, and I think the 2025 parochial report has 4,400. So we're in full communion with the Evangelical Lutheran Church, with the ELCA. The problem is we don't have a lot of ELCA churches in Wyoming, so the ability to have their rector or their pastor serve our church, there aren't a lot of them. The Methodist Church, we could make a deal. We're close to an agreement with them. But again, they can't fill their pulpits either. So it's not just.
The majority of people in the United States are no longer Christian, period. Or considered.
Yeah, they're spiritual, but not.
It's 55% of the population says they are not participating in any organized church.
And if I read this a while back, assuming it's true because I was reading it online, that at any given Sunday, 20% of the population attends a church service. And I'm not sure what it would have been when I was growing up in the 60s, but it certainly would have felt like more than.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. They're in this book, but and this is the data I used to spew out when I was doing Fresh Expressions work, when I was talking about getting out of traditional church buildings and doing church in parks and on mountaintops and in yoga clubs and things. But because they're just not, we've lost a generation my kids, I have one of our 2 kids goes to church, but it isn't my church. It's a evangelical church. And lots of us can't even get our own kids in our churches. So it's hard to say, how can we get young people in our churches? We can't even get our own kids to come to church. So it's a conundrum. But the beauty of Stephanie's book is she does have some suggestions from these people. Here's what you can do. And it's not this. It's not sitting in a Sunday morning. It's the stuff you do outside the walls of your church. They want to be involved in something. They want to be invited to help make a difference in their community.
So I know when we had, So I know from listening to the young people at General Convention and the young people at Diocesan Convention, what we hear both places, and I have no doubt 27 will hear the same thing at General Convention, what they are most interested in is justice work. Mm-hmm. That's what concerns them. That's what they're interested in. When they're looking at churches, that's one of the things they're looking at is what are you doing to make this a more just, country, a more just world, to bring equality. And, they're very clear about that. They are explicitly clear about that. And I remember the past 2 conventions we've had, the people from the Wyoming Service Corps, mm-hmm. who said over and over again, this is what young people are passionate about. This is what we're passionate about. And people kind of went, oh, I wonder what it is young people want. Oh, what could they possibly want? Because they weren't even listening to the people that were there telling them, who were in their 20s, who took a 2-year break. Is it 2 or 3?
Wyoming Service Corps? Yeah. It's just 1, and then with an option
and then you
to do a second. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And most of them re-up.
Yeah,
so it's a
did.
2-year deal where you're basically, it's like the Peace Corps. You go there and you spend 2 years volunteering your time and maybe having another job on the side to help pay your bills, but you're involved in things in the community, and almost all of them, it's something related to some form of justice. And we got Jordan out of that. We got Travis out of that. We got Alan Doyle out of that. Mm-hmm. We got Miranda, who's the parish administrator at Cody, out of that. So we get leaders from this that love Wyoming and stay in Wyoming and get ordained and serve churches here. Mm-hmm. So if we want to know what can we do, let's get more interested in that. Mm-hmm. If you want young people coming, because that's what their concern is, because they're looking at the world around them going, this is not a nice place to live. Mm-hmm. We're not treating people right. So that's, and it's nice to do the food bank and it's nice to do some of these other things, but what they're looking at is don't do the palliative care for after we've screwed everything up. Let's fix the problem. So that's really
Yeah.
And that's what they said.
The reason we have We Just now is because Jordan, when he was here, helped launch that. He
was one of the
Meg
the
Nichols
people inspired.
in Cody or in Powell decided this was something we needed to do at the diocesan level. So yeah. Anyway, good book. Read. It's an easy read, and it really does have some good nuggets in it to help us at least understand why we're where we are and what the possible hopes are, because there is hope.
I did attend an evangelical service in Laramie with my granddaughter, and there's got to be something, because there was not an empty seat in that place, and it was almost all college. A big portion of it was college students. But I don't know what's I think
it's community. My kids go to Sunrise Church in Torrington, and Torrington's a tinier town than Douglas, and I think it's smaller than Lander. And this church has 400 people on a Sunday. In a town where the Episcopal Church has 27, but it's about family and community. And the minute they show up, new family shows up, they're put in a life group. They meet, they become, they're almost a closed system. I mean, they become part of this group but they support each other. Somebody's in the hospital, they're there. They'll drive to Denver to visit them in the hospital. If somebody, they're very, and they just love each other. They have all kinds of things going on. They've got, 70 kids in the Sunday school. Yeah, it's pretty astounding.
One thing at the diocesan level, at the Episcopal level, that I find lacking in the Episcopal Church. When we did a visit for the Art of Hospitality out in, which is similar to Invite, Welcome, Connect, we went to Kansas City, Adam Hamilton's church. And one of the things they do is, and it's Methodist, but one of the things they do is kind of along that idea of they've got booklets for a Bible study, discipleship group, bang, ready to go. We don't have that in the Episcopal Church that I've seen. So what they do is the same thing as at my daughter's evangelical church. The first thing they do is try to get young people in groups, small groups, so they develop relationship and community. And we don't, at least I haven't seen resources in the Episcopal Church that are set up to facilitate that, so that you don't have to be a priest. You don't have to be anything. You can just have a heart for, here's a study
and
manual,
obviously this
let's
church
put it together.
in Torrington has they have a pastor and a couple of youth pastor people that are and my kids are both on staff, but they're not ordained anything. They do different kinds of programming.
So
stuff,
I think that's something just
we
the chain.
I mean, we talk about Invite, Welcome, Connect, but we've not really, we don't go around and say, this is a great program, or it's not, whatever it is, or is there something better? So yeah, I agree. I agree. I think just formation in general, at least in the Diocese of Wyoming, which is my context, is.
Yeah, and that's what my daughter in the evangelical church that she's in. Quickly, there were friendships put together with a study group. Theirs was a real more evangelical Bible study, but it was the same idea.
Exactly.
Put a group together.
Yep.
And that also happened.
See you in the morning. Yeah, sorry, what time are we? Yeah, I'm sorry, Margaret.
Well, our time with Melinda is quickly coming to an end, so how do we get to a point where we make a decision on what we're doing?
That's a really good question. And I don't think it's a question we're going to answer tonight. But Melinda you're done the end of August, so we've got a couple months. And then we need to figure out what else needs to happen. So your vestry needs to have a conversation. I mean, that's the decision makers. And I understand you don't have a current senior warden, right? But the rest of the vestry and or this transition team, we probably need to collate what we've heard tonight and decide what, I mean, you've had Melinda. Do you want another interim? I don't have a lot of those in the wings, but we can figure some things out to at least make sure you're provided with coverage. I promise you that. Well,
I might suggest that one way or the other, no matter which direction we went, would be well served to at least start down the mutual ministry path, because that
Exactly.
works with part-time, it can work with full-time, it can work on its own. But what it does do is get us moving in a direction that will ensure that the momentum keeps going. We keep having church on Sundays, we keep doing the ministries that need to be done.
Absolutely.
So-
And I think we would start that with those obvious mutual ministry things. We need to have 3 or 4, preferably, licensed worship leaders that are able to lead morning prayer if you don't have, or liturgy of the word if you don't have a priest here, or that can do what you're going to see tomorrow with Shalini and I, and that Shalini and Janet will do in a couple weeks, where we have the rector's not going to do anything except what you need a priest to do at the table. And that, the more we can practice that, the more it becomes part of what we do. I've got lots of curriculum for licensed worship leader training. I offered to come over and do that, and I think we need to schedule that. So maybe tomorrow we can actually look at a calendar and say, when can we do that, and who's interested in and we'll start with worship leader training, and then we'll talk about Eucharistic visitors and Eucharistic ministers if we need to think more along those lines. But let's get at least the service piece figured out, so that, like you said, Walt, whether or not we have a priest there every week, once a month, once every 2 months, as we figure out what we really are financially able to do and need and want, we at least can carry on and not feel like we're fumbling around, okay?
I'm not sure what Gail's conversation has been with Shalini, but, I've volunteered that when we're here, I'd be glad to do the service at the table. That's not necessarily preaching a brand new sermon every time, but there are sermons at work.
Exactly.
There are things like that that honors my retiredhood, but I can serve at that table anytime I'm here, so we don't have to go without Eucharist. And I think Gail and, Shalini's coming up, but if we can get some people that would volunteer to that wonderful gift of worship leadership. And I look at our congregation, there are tons of talented people that in prayer, they could be discerned in their own hearts and with God to be a worship leader. We have gifted speakers and people that love God. So that's just my perspective.
And we can do testimonies and stories without having a licensed preacher. I mean, we can bend those rules. If somebody's got a powerful story under some, I'm not saying you can't preach, but you can tell your story. You can tell, you can tell where you saw God in your life. I mean, you can talk. We can do dialogical things, and you've got mentor clergy here who can carry that along once we get the basics down. So, one of the things that and I think I mentioned this at that last meeting, that we could do, and I think, Melinda, you said you did it, I don't remember if you've done it here or not, but an instructed Eucharist or an instructed morning prayer.
We did, I split it into 2 parts. So
Okay.
First Sunday's liturgy of the word,
Okay.
Sunday's liturgy of the table. Yes, we did that last 2 Sundays in Easter.
Okay, good. So you at least have a concept of the background of that. But just more of, I can do a worship leader training in probably, to get the full story of it in 2 like Saturday afternoon kind of things or mornings, okay? So, or whatever your schedule is, a daytime thing. I can do that. Somebody else can do that too, but I do have that ability and willingness to help you with that. So I think that is a good next step. Well, and then the other thing I would like to have us do is start walking through this Vocation Hub profile of your congregation, so that if you decide you want to call a rector of any level, we've got that ready and you know what kind of person you want to look for. Does that sound fair? Okay. Well, come back in the morning and I'll talk to you some more about mutual ministry, because this sheep